Okay, so we're going to just quickly go over a few things that we didn't get to last class from the last lecture. We talked about 1 degree curve, 2 degree curve, and 3 degree curve, but we didn't talk about how we can change the degree or rebuild an object. And kind of the tail dove into that, we didn't really talk about solid objects either, or how to create them. And there's a few other tools that we didn't get to, like lofting multiple curves together to create a surface. Did we talk about the revolve tool at all? No? Okay, so hopefully we'll get to that as well. And then we'll get into a little more technical stuff, talking about the Boolean tool, which is combining objects together or subtracting them from each other. We'll do a kind of quick lab, hopefully, to create this object here, which is just kind of like a bracket. And then we'll start talking about assignment 1. So a full day today. And we'll also, as we go through, we'll talk about the gumball modeling aid, which is pretty useful, especially in the new V5. So I went ahead and updated, so I have V5 now, so it should look like yours. Couple of changes or differences that you probably already noticed is that there's multiple toolbars here in the layouts. So, and as you go through these, and some of these, this should change here. Yeah, so the curves tool, which is Levine's tool, right? So all of these options, again, are under the curve pull down menu. And so as you go from curve tools to surface tools to solid tools, your sidebar changes and your options up here change. They're basically all options under these pull down menus. So they're quick access menus for that. Excuse me. The new functions, the only one that I've really gotten to take a look at is the gumball. If you turn it on, whatever you have selected basically gives you an XYZ locator that you can manipulate in 3D space. And it allows you to, if we just draw a simple rectangle, just kind of demonstrate what this thing does. So if you hold down on the arrows, you can move the entire object that you have selected. If there's this little guy here, this little window, as you rotate around this object, you'll see that window switches. And if you hold that window down, it allows you to move in both the Z and the x-axis, right? So vice versa, if you rotate it around and you're on the Y and X axis, it allows you to move in multiple directions, not just one direction. These little guys here are actually scale tools. So this is scaling 1D and 1D, right? But I think if we hold the shift key down, it starts to scale in 2D when we're talking about profiles. But if we have a 3D object selected and we start to hold this down, it actually scales in 3D. So you can see that thing moving scaling proportionally to each other in all three directions. So that's the difference between 1D scale, 2D scale, and 3D scale. You can play with that once we build a 3D object. but just kind of running through the motions here. These lines indicate rotation. So if I wanted to rotate this guy, we can rotate it in whatever degree you want it to be in. Same with, we can start to rotate it around any axis we want. And I'm pretty sure that's true for 3D objects as well. And if we click that little white circle there, we have some tools. We can relocate the gumball. So if you wanted to locate it specifically to maybe like a corner of your object, you can do that. You can reset it to go back to snap to the default center. If you double click instead of, or just click once instead of holding it, you can type in a specific dimension in these directions with the arrows. So you have a bunch of options here. You can align to different objects, align to the world. Sounds kind of cool, right? I haven't played with all of these settings, but it's just kind of a brief overview of what the tool can do. And then if you click settings, it takes you to your Rhino options, which is also your document properties. We've discussed this already, and you can manipulate the colors, right, of your X, Y, Z axis. You can enable, disable the gumball completely, and you can start to change options about the gumball here. So that's all under that Rhino property, file properties, right? Or tools, options, takes you to the same place. All right, let's digress a bit and go back to talking about if I were to draw, we talked about the rail 1 sweep, right, where we drew a curve and then swept a circle around that curve, right, last class. We can also, if we drew, let's go with free form curve control points. And let's draw one kind of, I don't know, let's draw one in the front view somewhere. Hopefully this works and I'm not going to look like a fool, which happens a lot. Thanks for acknowledging that, Ryan. With the head nod there. I'm going to draw one curve, and I'm going to right click to go into the command again, and I'm going to draw on, I'm going to click this point in 3D perspective, and then I'm going to kind of go to my top view, hopefully here, to draw on my, yeah, I'm going to take off some of these snap things, and hopefully I'll start drawing on the flat surface here. And so we've got kind of two completely different looking curves, but we can now thanks. Let's try that again. Thank you. Sometimes I forget. Okay, we should be able to use the surface sweep to rail tool to select the first rail and then the second rail. Uh-oh, what did I do? Let's try it the other way. Maybe I have to have another curved surface. I actually did not practice this one because I thought I knew it. That's sweet. Do you know this tool, Ryan?
I messed it up for the second time.
Yeah, so you were in the same boat. Okay. Yeah. So that's a pretty crazy shape. A lot crazier than I thought I was gonna get. But basically you're extruding that thing along both of those curves. And so that was a little crazy example, but more or less that's what that two rail sweep does. Thought I was going to get a nice plane between them. But in order to do that,
I think that's sweep number.
what's that?
Isn't that sweep number? You should take a profile and sweep along the ramp.
Right, but we want, but you can sweep it between two rails. Yeah. To make a surface out of that, though, we could use the loft tool, right? And click and enter. That's also a very terrible example because nothing is unique that we could use out of that shape. Yeah, we just made a Frank Gehry building right there. Except it's a surface. It doesn't really help us out too much. So let's try that actually with a surface that makes a little more sense. So glad everyone's paying attention. Think about all the possibilities. What's that? Okay, I'm going to draw in my right view here, and I'm going to just create a curve surface, or I'm sorry, a curve. And so you can see that, why does that do that to me today? Curve, 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 freeform. Okay, that one's straight. Sort of. That's not the line that I want. Where are we at? Here we go. Yeah. This is this tool that I was having trouble with this morning. We're just going to Control-C, Control-V this a couple times. And move him over. And
Just scale this thing. You're trying to lock.
yeah,
So instead of duplicating this, then you just scale it to change it real quick. Show it last time. Alright.
so scaling idea is a good idea. I'm not going to disassociate that, but I don't want to scale each one at one and then copy it over. That seems kind of crazy. I can loft between these and create a surface. And if you have wireframe turned on here, you'll just get kind of a mesh looking thing, solid shape. So, go back to my standard toolbar, and I can turn my points on. And you can see that I've got a series of points that you can start to manipulate and create more of a free-form surface. Now, if we use the rebuild command, rebuild command, I'm just going to type it in. And I'm going to select this curve to rebuild. It brings up a dialog box where you can change your degree, the curve, the degree of the curve, right? So right now it's a 3-degree curve, which means it's a very smooth curve. If you change that to a 2 or a 1, it would not be so smooth. But we can also interject more control points to that curve through the rebuild surface tool. And so that allows us to put more, as I build this thing up and put more points in, you can see that we get more horizontal and vertical lines, and each one of those where they cross, there should be a point. So you can really start to fine-tune this thing, and as a result, we're basically, I could be mistaken about this, but basically we're creating a larger, smaller mesh on this surface as we increase the amount of points on that. So that's a quick lesson on the rebuild tool, changing the degrees and creating a loft surface. Okay. Couple of things that we didn't talk about really were how to create a solid. So I think we briefly touched on it, but we didn't get into. We talked about a box and I don't know, did we get into the solids at all last class? No?
All we did was cap one.
All I did was cap one, capped a surface.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So not to get too far off track from what I wanted to do today, let's create a box using the corner to corner. And I'm just going to create a box, and then in my 3D view, for a little bit more control here, I'm just going to go ahead and make a giant box. Yeah, thank you. I'm turning my snaps off so it doesn't lock to anything, and I'm going to turn my grid snap off and my smart track off because it was starting to smart track to other objects, which is, I don't think I clearly talked about smart tracks last class, but basically if you have smart track on, see how if you look in my top view, there's a little white dot that appears up here. it's smart tracking and trying to connect the wherever this point is. It's trying to snap to this point, but over here. So it's similar to the AutoCAD Smart Track tool, where you have a vector line and you're trying to draw the same vector line in the same spot, like 10 feet over. And it's a smart track that says, okay, I know where this point is in space, and I'm going to smart track horizontally here, over here, to allow you to pick in the same plane and draw another line. It just can happen in 3D in this program. If that makes some sense. At any rate, made a solid. Good grief. I don't like how it doesn't rotate around the object when you have it selected, but that's neither here nor there. I'm going to turn on, I guess shaded is fine. So the split tool here, under the standards, we have a split tool and a trim tool. If we use the split tool, I think I have to split, yeah. So it's split surface. No. I'm sorry. We have to extract surfaces first. So just to talk about solids for a second, a solid is technically hollow. It's a series of surfaces connected together. It's similar to SketchUp in that way. So this object is not technically solid. It's just closed by 6 surfaces, right, to make a rectangle. And so if we use the extract, I think it's the extract surface tool. Let's try the explode tool first. But yeah, so if we use the explode tool, we basically have exploded this into the surfaces, right? We can also extract a surface by right-clicking the explode tool and clicking, we got too much stuff going on. And I want to turn my gumball on here, right? Why isn't my gumball turning on? Quit telling me what I'm doing wrong over there, Ryan. So we can start to explode this surface, right? So you can see that this object is hollow inside. The other cool thing about the split surface by ISO curve, if we hit the right mouse button here on the split tool, it allows us to start to split this surface. And if I hit the toggle button here, or the T for toggle, and enter, you can start to split. Oops, I always hit escape and I don't mean to. And enter. Now we've just split that surface into a couple separate surfaces. And so the tool that I couldn't get to work this morning, maybe yours will, is if you click it, click the object, hit the control button, and then drag, it's supposed to extrude. Does anybody get that to work?
Try the function button next.
Yeah. So I'll have to work on that. But at any rate, you can start to see how you can start to model things similar to SketchUp if you can get that stupid tool to work. I'll play with it, between now and next class and try to get that to work. I just kind of learned of that tool this morning, but it's a neat tool to split surfaces and divide surfaces. So with that, let's move on to something else. Talked about the Smart Track tool, the gumball modeling aid a bit. The command prompt, if you ever lose it, it's in the properties here under something. Found it the other day. Oh, this is terrible. All right. Ooh, don't. There it is, under appearance. So Rhino options, appearance. There's a couple of check bars in here. One of them is the command prompt. So if I uncheck that, notice my command prompt goes away up here. So that's where you find that. You can also type in command prompt and it says, do you want to show it or not? And I went no, and it disappeared, and I went, oh no, I don't know how to get it back. I had to Google it. When in doubt, Google it. At any rate, just wanted to show you that. So we could also utilize the revolve tool. There's two types of the revolve tool. One is literally we're revolving something around a three-dimensional circle. So if we were to create a free-formed curve, and go down to revolve, select the curve to revolve, and now we just kind of choose an axis. I'm gonna hold the shift key, and we can use a start angle of 0 and an end angle of 360 and hit enter. And we've got this really nice object, or that curve revolved to make a surface, right? And it really probably could be like a vase or something, I don't know. But we can also use a rail, what's called a rail revolve, which if we Control Z that and decided to what do we want to do here? We want to do maybe a poly. Let's just do a poly center radius here, and we'll start kind of here, and we want to maybe go into a viewport that we're perpendicular to that object, and just kind of going to go ahead and create that thing. They don't necessarily have to be touching. We can now utilize the surface rail revolve, and it says select the curve, which is this guy, and then select the rail that we want to curve this around, and then an axis. And then it asks us to choose an axis. And that allows us to basically revolve an object around any type of curve. So this could be a really wonky curve, or it could be a very geometrical curve, so you can see how maybe you could utilize that to make a very complicated table leg of some sort, right? Instead of using a 360, you could start to make some hard edges with utilizing another type of rail to revolve that object around. So I'm doing these in pretty large scale, at least it appears that way based upon the other objects that I've made, but you can do this at a very small scale as well. Just have to start typing in units when you want to define how big that circle or whatever shape you make is. We can also utilize the revolve tool to make solid objects. So for instance, if we went into our right side here and created a circle, right, and then utilized the revolve tool, hit enter, and the axis, hopefully this isn't going to be too screwy. Start angle is 0, end angle is 360, and then look, we've made a solid object using the revolve tool. So you can do that with you know, the rectangle tool and things like that as well. So if we were to draw a rectangle, utilize I'm getting lost here. The revolve tool. I'm going to click my midpoint here on so that I can select the middle of this thing. You can see I just made a cylinder. And then another kind of cool tool is the fillet. I always forget if it's under gets fillet corners, fillet curves, surfaces. Yeah, fillet surface versus fillet curve. We want a fillet curve. So we can select that curve and type in a specific radius, maybe it's 0.0125. I don't know what's going on here. Let's try something bigger. Why? Probably because it's really small. Redo that. And fillet curve. Sure doesn't look like it did it. Does it? Because it's an edge, not a curve. Oh, I'm doing well today. Fillet edge. There we go. Not fillet curve, fillet edge on a 3D surface. Fillet curves for 2D line work. So my apologies. So, difference between grouping curves and joining curves. if we create a series of lines, let's do line segments. Just draw on the right hand side here. And we start to type in group objects, and you select those. Notice that it makes one object. However, if you were to go to, let's just say, sweep something along that. I hope I don't put my foot in my mouth here, because I haven't actually tried this. And we go back to, sweep one rail. Notice that that group of lines, it goes back to only being able to pick the one rail line, right? So you can group objects together, but when you start to do stuff like this, where you're actually sweeping something along a path and you've got multiple line segments, you want to use the join tool. So if I were to escape that and Control Z, not until that disappears, but let's redo that. So we've got multiple lines here. I can select them all, and this guy is my little join tool. So that joins them together, right? And we could smooth out this curve using the fillet. Fillet curve tool. Maybe. Yeah, see how it made a nice round edge there? So that's what the fillet curve tool does, not the fillet surface tool. So, and then again, we can go ahead and utilize, I need to click my endpoint on here. And we can loft, or sweep rather, along that path. But if you just group those lines together, we couldn't have swept that circle along that path. So that's the kind of the difference between grouping curves together and joining curves together. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. So let's look at some of these other solid forms here. Spheres, obviously create spheres, right? Just created a second sphere right there. Cylinders, right? We can create cylinder shapes. Cones. Truncated cones, I'm assuming, is going to be where we can change the radius at the top. Pyramids, you can change the number of sides on the pyramid. Mine's set at 5 right now. A little more control going into 3D to get the height. You could type in a specific height here if you wanted to as well. Truncated pyramids. I'm assuming that's going to do the same thing as the cone. ellipsoid. Ellipsoid basically is creating an ellipse, but a three-dimensional ellipse, kind of looking like an egg. So I'm just going to kind of draw this out in space here a little bit. Not really going to worry about how big it is at the moment. So if we turned on our control points to this guy, or any of these objects for that matter, you can start to change the shape of it, right? But you'll notice that we start to get this kink here. It's a pretty hard edge. And so what we really want to do is rebuild this object, and I don't know, let's just do 10 and 10 and change it. It was a 2-degree curve. We can change it to a 3-degree curve and click OK. And now you'll see we've got a lot more control points. And if I select on those control points and start to pull this down, we no longer get that kink here. Right? So we can start to manipulate this thing to kind of look like whatever weird shape you want to make it. But you can do that with any of these objects. Right? So we could rebuild. If I can spell. What is this? F. Okay, so maybe we can't do it with every object, but we can do it with most objects. And so you can start to manipulate using your gumball fairly easily to manipulate things here. I guess it really only works with spheres and ellipsoids. Let's look at maybe a paraboloid. So this is making a 3-dimensional parabola, right? Tubes. First we define the outer thickness, then the inner thickness, right? And then we define the height of it. And so you can kind of play with the rest of these a bit. I'm going to create a plane here. And then extrude the surface just a bit. And I'm going to have to cap that, I just realized. So now I've got a fully enclosed. I'm going to go ahead and select all this other stuff. I'm going to go up to layers, and I'm just going to put them on this other layer so that I can turn it off. That guy didn't get on the other layer because turn him off. You have control points turned on an object, you have to turn them off to actually select the object. Kind of a pain in the butt, but so I'm going to go ahead and kind of center this guy. Not really snapping to that, am I? Let's try intersection. Mid. I'm just going to grab it close and I'm going to go down so that it's kind of centered here. Thought I made a... Okay. Didn't realize I did that. Thought that was over here. Let's delete that. And I'm just going to move this one back into place here. That looks good to me. I'm going to Control C, Control V that, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, creating a very terrible blimp. Or a rocket. And so
that's what it looks like just as it starts to move.
That's right. Just as it impacts a surface, right? That's exactly what we're doing here. So under the solid tool, we have a Boolean union, Boolean difference. And so if we were to click the difference, select surface or polysurface to subtract from, let's select that object and press enter. And if we selected both of those objects and click enter, it subtracted those shapes from that object. So you could see how maybe you were wanting to like show some detail, you know, on an object where you've got a screw head, you know, you can start to create individual screw heads without actually creating the rest of the screw. But you could use a, what are these? Why am I? Truncated cone? Yeah, okay, truncated cone, right? No, that's not what I wanted. Thank you, parabola. Yeah, parabola. That's what I was looking for. So in theory, right, you could attach a really poorly drawn parabola, you know, and then subtract something like that out of it to create, you know, a screw head, something like that. I'm going to Control Z what I did here, and I'm going to go back and do a union. So I'm going to union, I'm going to create one shape out of that. So basically it subtracted this shape from these shapes and connected them all together to make one shape. And we could fill it a surface completely. So if I click on this surface and this surface, what happened there? Let's change the radius to like 10 and see what happens here. Okay, this object is very large. A lot larger than I was doing this morning. But let's repeat that command and maybe change this to 50. And click our surfaces. That's really large. I don't know, let's try like 200 this time. That was too big. And let's try 150. Ah! I am not getting the shape. There we go. So you can basically go ahead and fillet surfaces from surface to surface. And at some point here we could explode this model, I believe. You know, and maybe delete out some of this stuff that you don't want to see here. Didn't quite work as perfectly as I wanted it to, but you could start to fill in those surfaces and create kind of a solid object in that sense. I'm going to kind of Control Z that. And remember, we were kind of filleting this surface to this surface and making a nice fillet there. But we could also fillet okay. Fillet the edge, right? And so we could start to select all of these edges. I'm not going to do it to the entire object, but I'll do it to most of the object. And we can start to create, so we don't have quite a hard edge between, you know, objects that we've unioned together. We can start to round that edge out with the fillet command. So that's kind of talking about the union and difference Boolean tool. Let's go ahead and spend the next few minutes here. I'm going to attempt turn back on all this crap here, stuff, and I'm going to select this object that I had opened up and change that to its own layer, and I'm going to turn off, oops, I'm going to put this guy on this layer. So basically our goal for the next few minutes is to create this object. I'm going to go ahead and utilize, I'm going to start by creating two circles. So I'm going to do a center radius circle. And smart track should be on. Maybe just nudge this so that it's whatever, that's close enough. And let's create another circle. Debating on which way to do it. It's not smart tracking. Huh? Do I? Does it? Grid snap overrides the other smart track. Just going to use the 2-point curve circle to get those on the same line there. And now I want to use a single line and click the tangent point. I'm going to unclick the other ones. So I should be snapping to my tangent. Right click again, snapping to the tangent. That didn't quite work out the way that I wanted it to. Turn off my grid snap here. Thought I just clicked near. I'm using my near snap and then my tangent to kind of get that the way that I want. And now in our standard layout toolbar here, you can use the trim tool to trim between those two lines. Hit enter, and now I can trim out. So I'm starting to get a shape that looks like this, right? And I can go ahead and select all of those lines and join them together to make one solid line. If I select those and go to my surface tool and click this little arrow, I can go create surface from planar curves. And as you can see in my 3D, right, I'm creating a surface here. And now I can extrude this surface up. And let's just maybe go up 6 inches. And then cap this thing. So now we've got a solid object. It's a little bigger than that one, but that's okay. And now I want to put a hole in here. So if I go to my solid toolbar and go down to cylinder, I can create I want it to snap to that line. Which one? Well, that's a pain in the butt. I don't like that tool. Everybody follow that?
You're creating something like that, but you center it on 3.
Right. So we have our center and near on. Just center. We don't have to have our near on. I don't use this. I should use it more. We want to create a cylinder. So in order for it to recognize the center of this circle, right, we have to highlight that line. All right, and then it recognizes the center of that circle. So once we do that, it picks the center of the circle. And I don't know how big we want to make this. Maybe something like that. And I'm going to draw it in the negative direction. And then we want to do a Boolean difference. Select this object. And then select that object. And I love it when stuff works. Just make sure it's cutting through the entire thing. There we go. So I first selected the object that I wanted to cut out of, right? And then I hit enter, and then I picked the object that I wanted to cut, and then enter, and it created that thing, that void. And then we can go back in and fillet the edges. And select all the edges at once. And yeah, it's a little big. So let's repeat that command, the right click. Come on. And I want to change my radius. To maybe 0.5. See if that helps. Oh, except I've got the 1 still at that, so that doesn't work. There we go.
How do you change the radius there?
Why you gotta be like that? Huh? Because I don't know. I'm learning this tool for the first time today,
I think
right
you
now.
tap through and select it.
I'm learning it right now with them. I don't know.
All right. I'm sorry. I got you.
Quit being a dick.
Yeah, you probably want to take that out of your recording.
Nah, I'm gonna leave it. So we still have that original surface and the original line work that we created. So that's where you want to start to maybe set up layers and organize stuff appropriately. So like this would go on a line work layer, this would go on a surface layer, and then this would be on a 3D object layer. How many people have that object up and done? Let's take the last 10 minutes of class and try to work on that.
While we're helping them, take your original line curve draw the interior void and then make a 3D instead of a surface and extrude in a cap. Just do, you should be able to select the interior circle, the exterior perimeter, and create a solid directly from that. Can you?
I don't know.
Can you try it?
Not right now.
Okay.
Huh? Yeah, you did.
It's just because I'm done. Okay, who's totally lost?
I just have a surface. And I did the wrong
So, extrude surface.
Try selecting this on this side. So you basically probably just control.
Yeah, this is where I get a little excited. Okay. So you can also utilize the extrude planar curve tool to get a complete surface first instead of capping it, which so if we go to our solid command and extrude planar curve straight and click just the just the curve itself, we can create the surface without having to cap it. If that makes some sense. So there's multiple ways to do this. So if I just move this off to the side, and we could even draw that line work first. Ryan was trying to get me to do that.
What was it? It was called surface.
So if I go to my front view and just draw a circle in here, I should be able to go solid, extrude, planar curve, straight, and select those two objects and press enter, and create that same surface a lot simpler. So we first made it the really complicated way, and you can make it the less complicated way. But it's good to understand both ways of how to do it. It's under something, surface, or it's under surface, or no, it's under solids, and it's the union of difference tools. So the difference. So it says select surface to follow surface to subtract with, that's this surface. And then hit enter, and now hit the next one.
No, something's different, I don't know what it is.
Let's try this again. Right click. Yeah, to and now let's pick this surface. And it says press, select surface and polysurface to subtract from, which we did. Hit enter. And then select surface and polysurface to subtract with. And enter. Yeah, down at the bottom, there's the on snap, rib snap. If you select on snap, those options pop up. We didn't quite get to the rest of the work tonight.
It's not working.
You doing all right?
I ended up getting stuck just making this first shape. I watched kind of the later stuff, I think, but yeah, this stuff back here.
Okay. What helped, I think, me was that I utilized the 2-point circle to first use my red line to get those two on the red line itself, so I don't have a diagonal. You can see that little notch there, which makes a diagonal. But then if you use the curve and line tool, single line, and utilize the end snap, or the near
It
snap,
works on that.
and the tangent snap. So hover over here to grab the near, eyeball first tangent, and then click, and then grab the tangent. And so now that we have, hopefully this one is connected to the two circles, you can use the trim command, which is right here. You can select this line and that line, and press enter, and then click what you want to trim out.
Do you want solid? Yes.
No. Escape, hit the trim tool, select this line and then that line, hit enter, and now select this line and that line. Okay?
Oh, well, right?
Awesome.
Okay, let's just do it.
Trimming it. So once you finish selecting the objects to trim, and so we select this line and this line, hit enter, and now we can subtract and trim out. So basically, I think what's happening is that these lines are actually connected to this object. I guess it's these two.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we scroll in here, this line
Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, let's delete that line and redraw. So with the curve, line, single line. Let's make sure that let's turn on snaps and select the near snap and the tangent snap. So now it should snap to that line. I mean, if you scroll out a bit, you may the more, there we go. Now try it. Yeah, we do that one too.
Oh, there it is, surface plan. Okay, that's what
Alrighty, class is officially over.
Okay. Hey, any idea, okay, we did manage to get a surface for them. What's Command-Z, cause it's an apple. So but we were trying to go straight from the surface. Extrude curves straight.
So that's extruding a curve, not a surface.
But it's not a surface, I undid the surface. So, remember the way we did it the
Oh.
first time? This is, but if we turn it from that, so it's working. But when we zoomed in, I turned all the snaps off because I thought it was snapping to the face or something.
Yeah.
It's this air, invalid surface, and I can't put it light, you see that?
Is that just because it's a line?
But it shouldn't, because we're doing a solid. Extrude is an inner curve, not a surface.
Should just be a plain straight, right?
Straight.
Yeah. Maybe try redrawing the shape, maybe something glitched out on it.
Bring the solid
Yeah.
by extruding a planar curve to a point. Let's try that one.
So, everybody left. Thursday we'll talk about the homework assignment,
Well, that would work.
since we didn't get to it today.
So,
Not due till next Tuesday, so.
yeah, I don't know. Or, oh, this one is. Yeah, I don't know. Try drawing it again. I mean, otherwise you can do it the other
Huh?
way.
Like totally three guys.
When?
She had these two circles.
Wait. Uh-oh. I think I just started recording on top of the last class.